This is the first of 3 studies leading up to the next painting in the series. I'll be honest, this first study didn't go where I wanted it to, but that's the point. Unlike the last painting, this one is supposed to push color and contrast much further. But the first washes interacted in a way that dulled everything down. When I mix the paint, I'm paying close attention to how much water I'm using. With sunrise colors, even a small shift in water ratio can change the entire mood. Here are the reference images I used for this study. I was drawn to the sunrise vibe of the scene and how that bright sliver on the horizon shaped the whole mood. That's why I mixed yellows, oranges, and reds for the first wash. What I didn't anticipate was how little the colors would fade as they dried. With watercolor, the more water you use, the lighter the paint will dry. At least in general. I'm usually in tune with this when I'm painting my usual blue sky scenes, but this time I underestimated it. I make a mental note to use more water next time. This study is about figuring out how far I can push the sunrise palette before I move on to the next version. I push on and remind myself that the purpose of a study isn't to end up with a perfect painting. It's to explore and test ideas. I'm not concerned with accurately representing the scene here. After the first wash dried, I block in buildings on both sides of the channel. The buildings touching the sky in the center were painted with a warm, dark red to create contrast against the light. I switch to shades of blue when I paint the large buildings on the right, the same building that was the focal point in my previous painting. At this point, I noticed that laying blue over the earlier wash wasn't creating an effect I wanted. The colors were fighting each other. Despite that, I push forward and add a blue wash over the sky. As the wash gets closer to the horizon, I shift the color to a darker warm gray to amplify the contrast between the clouds and the yellow sunrise. I paint the building reflections using a more contained color family, in contrast to the buildings themselves where I experimented with different hues to see how they would interact with the sunrise mood. At this point, the painting is made up of a handful of disconnected parts. Some parts are working better than others. I like how the reflection of the yellow sky meets the blue water in the foreground, and how the buildings in the background meet the sky. In the next version, I'll be more deliberate with the first wash, so there's stronger contrast between the yellow sky and the rest of the painting. At least that was my thought at the time. I've already painted the second study. Here's a sneak peek. I'm Lonnie Ash, and you can find more about my work at lonnieash.com.